Welcome everyone to interview number 24 of OSU Improvement Month. Today with Blue. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Oh my god. I feel like it's been actually way too long since we talked, probably since we last played tournaments with each other, which was like,
Yeah. Wow. Definitely a long time. I
yeah.
mean, I'm very honored to be here, though. I'm very excited.
Yeah, super excited to have you here. And just in case anyone is somehow not familiar with you, could you just give a brief rundown of who you are as a player and what people probably recognize you for?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, hello. I'm Blue. Uh, a lot of people call me Dylan, though, which is my real name. I'm honestly, I'm not really sure what I'm specifically known for. I mean, I guess I've been a top player for a good like 4 years now or something. I've set some pretty cool scores. Uh, I stream every now and then, and I tweet silly things sometimes. But yeah, that's about it, I think.
How did you become Blue?
Oh, do we want do we want the name history or just
I think we
the
do.
player blue? The
I
name history.
Yeah, well we'll do both, I'm sure.
Okay, it's quite a long story. I'll summarize it a little bit though. Um, wow, oh my god. Okay, so back when I was like really young, I didn't really have. I was maybe like 13 or something. I I never really had like an alias online. Like I would just use like random names on Steam and stuff, like just random funny things. Uh, and then randomly I was playing Team Fortress 2, and I straight up just stole this guy's name. So this guy was called Red Star, right?
Okay.
And you might see the connection already to what I go by on Twitch and stuff, which is Blue Sun.
Uh-huh.
So originally I copied it so it was the color blue sun. Um, and then I stuck with that for a while. And then I was playing like Counter Strike with some friends, and I was in like a clutch or something, and he said, "Oh, it's so blueable," and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty funny." And I changed my Steam name to Blueable with like the double O, and then I just took the last bit off, so it just became Blue, and then I've just sort of stuck with that ever since, I guess.
So you went from Blue Sun like Blue, and then
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
from there you went to Blueable with Bloo, and then you started using the Bloo version
yeah,
even with Blue Sun. I see.
yeah, yeah. I
That's
think it's really unique. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. It started with a very direct inspiration, but it definitely became its own distinct name, which is awesome. So it sounds like you started way back when playing a bunch of Steam games, and from
Yes.
there you discovered Osu somehow. Can you walk us through that story?
Yeah, sure. Wow. It's so like nice to go back, right, and think about these things. So I have a few notes written down here, and one of the things I have is I originally found Osu. I love telling this story. It's pretty funny. So I originally found out what Osu was, like discovered it in 2013. I never actually started playing it until 2015 though. Like I never made an account or anything. So back in 2013, when I was like when I was like 12 or 13, right? I I used to listen to a lot of Searle S3RL.
Oh, how did
Yeah.
that happen?
I don't know. I mean, I was like I don't know. I was a huge weeb back then. I think I listened to a lot of like Nightcore and stuff like that. But yeah, in the description to one of Searle's like songs on YouTube, there was like link to the Osu beat map of this song or something, and I was like, what the hell is that? So I click on it, and it was like the really old website, right? And it looked like one of those really sketchy websites that you don't really want to be on. And I was like, oh, what the hell is this? And I just clicked off, and I never thought about it until so one of my friends at the time, we were in like a Skype call, and he was like, "Oh, Dylan, I've got a game. I think you might like it, right? Because we used to like share anime with each other and stuff." And he said, it's called Osu. It's just like music, and it's like a rhythm game." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. Whatever. I'll try it out." Like I tried it that night, and he put me in a multiplayer lobby with him, on like on like 3-star maps, and I had no idea what was
Oh
going on.
God.
But the thing is, like, I found it so like entertaining. Like, I immediately got like hooked, basically, and I just, yeah. From there, I've played ever since.
Dang. So did you recognize the game from that Cyril video at the time from like 2 years prior?
Yeah. So what happened was he sent me the website, and I was like, oh, I remember this. Like if you see something just like passing by, and then you see it again in the future, and it's like, oh, I've got a feeling I've seen that before
Yeah, yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, yeah.
That's what happened, and then I figured out like, evidently I was on another Searle music video, and it showed the beat map link in the description, and I was like, oh, that's where I saw it, and it
Ah,
clicked. But
okay.
yeah,
So from there, you found the game. You were sort of jumped straight into 3 stars, and from there, did you continue like just playing with that friend mostly, or did you start playing in single player and kind of starting back from the basics and the tutorial, or what was your first experiences like with the game?
well, if we're talking my very first experiences, like that first day, I played in the multiplayer lobby with him, and then I tried out like solo maps and stuff. But that those first few attempts, like I had no idea what was going on. My friend told me I could change the background dim, and I could use the keyboard to click instead of my mouse. Um, and he sent me. It was like one of Wubberpool's really old skins with like, do you know the pink cursor, like the classic pink cursor that like everybody used in 2015, like Azer and Happy Stick and
Oh yeah,
yeah, all
yeah.
those. It was like a Wubberpool skin with that cursor, and I used that skin for so long. I remember. Yeah, he sent me that skin, taught me how to like tap on the keyboard and stuff, and then I just started playing whatever maps I had. And one thing I used to do, and I don't see a lot of new players doing this, right? So I saw people on the leaderboards of like the difficulties that I could play, right? Because I could obviously only play like the really easy ones. They were all using like hidden double time hard rock flashlight,
Oh, yep.
and I was like, oh whoa, that sounds pretty cool. And I saw like the sudden death mod as well, and a lot of like my early plays within the first week are like 4 mod or 3 mod or like weird mod combinations like hard rock sudden death with like 93%, uh, or just like random 3 and 4 mod FCs on these really low star difficulties, and I picked it up really quickly, like really quickly I picked it up.
The game itself
Um,
or the mods or what?
just the game itself in general, as I was playing, because I don't know, I was just playing over and over and over again, and I don't know. I never really had the start other than that multiplayer lobby where it was like, oh my god, I've got no idea what's going on. Da, da, da. I picked it up
Ah,
pretty quick. Like, okay, and the concept of sliders and tapping and stuff like that. That most new players don't really get, right, where they see a slider and it's like they try and tap it really quickly, or they don't
yeah.
understand that you have to move with it. And
Yeah, I see. So you were just a
yeah,
born prodigy, is what I'm hearing.
no, absolutely not. That's safe for Emmerich and the likes.
So first couple or months, I guess, it seems like you were really focused on. I mean, it almost just sounds like you were just kind of screwing around just for the fun of it and experimenting
Yeah,
with everything.
yeah. I mean, I was I get really hooked into things like pretty quickly. And I mean, like I'm still playing the game now, right? So it must have hooked me in. I don't know. It was just really entertaining. I needed something else to do at the time because I was getting really good at Counter Strike. Um, I was getting really good at Counter Strike, but then I found Osu, and it was like more of my time from Counter Strike was being put into Osu, and I was enjoying Osu more. And then Osu became my main game basically.
Interesting. So from there, so you sort of like naturally transitioned out of
Yeah,
CS:GO. I see. And so from there, who did you have any early inspirations or sort of, I guess, was there much motivation other than just liking to see yourself improve?
100%. I mean, you know, obviously because I got really into the game, right? I would search it up, and the first, the first video I remember seeing was oh, some of the first videos I remember seeing. I don't remember the exact first, but they were from Doomsday and Wolf, and then Happy Stick, and then Aza. But like Doomsday and Wolf were like the two that I originally saw first, and Doomsday was doing like 1v15 on image material, and there was like there was like highlights of the red light roses jumps being hit in the multiplayer lobby, and everyone was like, "What? Oh my god!" And like Wolf's classic early videos with the what's the song called with like the clowns in the background?
Yeah, the you and Owen was her like Impossible
Yeah,
song.
yeah, that's the one. It's like Impossible Osu songs, stuff like that. I watched all of them and like all the Happy Stick videos, um, all the really old, yeah, just all that stuff. I got really hooked, and specifically though, it was like Doomsday and Wolf that were like the big inspirations.
Dang, yeah. So, I mean, you're a tried and true 2015er. It seems
I
like.
really am. I really am. Yeah.
So from there, you kept grinding, and at what point did you start, I guess, interacting more with the community? And I think I first recognized you through playing tournaments, but even before then, I'm sure you started making a couple friends directly through the game. So, what was that process sort of like of breaking more into the community?
Yeah, so I mean, up until I actually got, I want to say, decent at the game, I barely met like, I met maybe one or two people like very early on that I would sort of have like, and this just a little tangent is kind of like the whole story of my uprising to become a top player. Like I always have somebody who's like a rival to me that I then overtake, kind of thing, if that makes sense. So essentially, like when I was like really new. I met like one or two players, and I didn't really know what PP was, but they would send me maps and like, dude, you should play this, and we would play the same maps and like keep going up the rankings together. But then eventually I would get really good, and then I would shoot ahead of them, and then I would meet another person, and then I'd do the same thing. And there's like a few names in my head. I think I still have them mutualed to this day, which is pretty cool. And yeah, then eventually I met someone who was like a huge rival to me. He was like he played everything that I did, but better, right? Like way better. But it was like attainable, right? I knew I could do the things that he was doing, and he ended up introducing me to like a friend group who I am still friends with today. You might know Tynamo at the very
Yeah,
least.
I do.
That was like my earliest like friend group to do with Osu.
Ah,
Um, yeah, it was a bunch of people, including Tynamo, and we would all play multis together. We would all post our scores and try and beat each other, and we were all like very similar in rank as well. They were all better than me as well. Every single one of them was better than me. Tynamo was crazy. He would beat me all the time. Um, yeah, it was such a fun time. Like I miss almost being like a 5-4 digit and just having that group of friends where it's like you're very similar skill and you can just go up together, right? That's like probably some of the more fun I had, and that kind of takes me to when I first started wanting to get really good, right? So I think, let me see. So it was like 2017. I ended up getting 4 digit, and being in this like new friend group, they wanted to introduce me to tournaments, right? I'd never played a tournament before. Um, I was really like nervous and excited to, but they invited me to their team. I think Tynamo still has the collab. I'll have to find that later, but that would be really cool to look at. Yeah, like we did a whole collab. It was I think like SST summer 2017 or something along those lines. Like it was like a monthly SST tournament.
it's SMT.
SMT, not SST. Sorry, SMT. Yeah, that's the one. Um, yeah, again, this was like this was like 5 years ago
No,
now.
you're good.
Um, but yeah, it was SMT in like July 2017. So like 2 years after I started, I think I was around like rank 4K, maybe a little bit higher. Um, that was sort of like my first taste of tournaments and how well I could really perform relative to my peers. and I mean, I did okay, right? I did good on the things that I was good at, but I was like uncontrollably nervous the whole time,
Oh no.
and it it was so weird because like I'd never experienced anything like that before, right? I was so uncontrollably nervous on these maps that of course I should have been able to do really well, and then I sort of understood it, right, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's like, and I wanted to play more, and then as you sort of experience OSU, you learn about the World Cups and stuff like that. And of course,
Ah.
I knew about them at that time, and I was like, okay, I want to play in the World Cup. That's what I want to do. That it was like that point, and since then, I literally like within a year from that point, I went from like top 5K to top 200
Oh my god. Wait, what the
within
heck?
that within that year. Yeah.
Was this in 2017 or 2018?
So from summer 2017 to summer 2018.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I okay. Let me think. I don't remember my exact. I must have been about like 2K maybe. I just remember I was within top 5,000 because I got 3 digit. Um, almost exactly a year before I got 2 digit. I think. Yeah. So it was like October, November when I got 3 digit for the first time, and I remember it was oh, what's it called? The one that Vax did in 2016. It's like
Uh,
Azora Jumping Heart or something.
oh, Aozora no Jumping Heart? The Love Life
It
song?
might. Yeah. It's that one. I remember I did one of the difficulties with Hidden Hard Rock.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I,
it's just Aozora
I
Jumping Heart. Okay.
yeah. I found the exact score. So I'm gonna post it. I have a screenshot of it.
Yeah,
This
sure.
was the score that got me to 3 digit. I'm gonna put it in the live chat.
All right, yeah.
There you go.
Those watching on YouTube, I'll put it on the overlay in just a second.
Yeah, so that score right there, honestly I'm surprised that I remembered that. That got me to 3 digit, and it was like such an insane achievement. I was so happy, and it was at this point where I was like, okay, I think I could be like really, really good at this game, and like I really want to push. And that's sort of how I got introduced into like the UK community and stuff like that. But I don't know if there's anything you want to, any details you want to know or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. I don't just want to talk my head off.
No, no, you're good. I'm definitely following. There's a couple things I want to sort of
Yeah, of
ask
course.
about. So, I mean, one common theme I'm noticing that I think is actually really like relevant or important is that it seems like throughout all your time, even since your very first days, you had people that were just barely either like at your level or a little above that push you to enter that next level. Like
Yeah,
all the way from your first day with, I assume that friend of yours was sort of your first like rival that you sort of strove
yeah,
to get better than, all the way up to 3 digit, 2 digit, and then from that point you started interacting more with like the best players of not only your country, United Kingdom, but also of the entire game. And I think that gradual like having those inspirations around you to keep pushing yourself is actually seems like a really common trend across a lot of different players that I've spoken to recently. So yeah, that is really, really interesting. So I want to break down a little bit specific skills that you were learning at that time. So the
yeah.
screenshot that you sent from Azure Jumping Heart was Hidden Hard Rock 1x100. So were you always sort of like playing every single mod? Like back
Um,
then, were
I
you
was
like,
so
yeah, you can go.
what? No, sorry. I'm just trying to gather my thoughts. So, like from the start, I was never afraid to use mods. Um, it's because I saw so many other players doing it. It's like, oh, why can't I do that type of thing? And that's how I've sort of played throughout the entire game, right? It's like if I see someone do something like, and I know I'm good enough to do it. Maybe I'm not right this second, but if I grind hard enough, I will be able to do it, type of thing. If I've seen someone do it, um, that's sort of how I've done it. But up until the point where I was like playing tournaments, I mainly only play like no mod, basically. My I'm pretty sure every PP milestone I got until 600 PP was all no mod, like every single one. May, maybe my first 100 was like a DT, but I don't remember that far. I only remember like 200 up until 900. But um, yeah, up until like that sort of July 2017 point is when I realized like, oh, okay, like I need to start playing more mods. Like I need to start playing hidden. I need to start playing hard rock. I need to play more double time, and that's sort of how my improvement came so quick to me, if that makes sense. Because it's like I was learning so many new things at once that it was just amplifying what I was already good at, if that makes sense.
Ah,
Because it's so insane to me like how quickly I improved. Because this is a funny story actually. So um, I got my first 7-star FC on Monstrata's Inferno, like the top div.
oh, what the heck?
Yeah, and I was like 4 digit.
Wait, that map is really hard.
Yeah, and it was my second ever pass on the map.
You
so
just kind of did that. Okay.
so I remember I was playing the map the day before with like no fail and I couldn't do it. And the next day I got my first pass on it. And then immediately after I FC'd it with like 92% AC. And I remember I used to use Emilia's skin a lot back then. I used to use Emilia's skin a lot back then. That was like my favorite skin to use, I think. And then like Rohulk's classic green skin. But yeah, that it was crazy because I would just wake up the next day and I would just be exponentially better than I was the day before. And it like I can't explain it even now because you know, as you get better at the game, it's like you don't experience moments like that very often, if at all. You know, you have to grind very, very hard to see that level of improvement instead of just waking up the next day and being like, "Oh my god, I can do this now."
I feel like I mean, just looking at your play history, I mean, I feel like a lot of it probably came. Like, I mean, how long were your sessions back then? Because it's like you pretty much consistently every single month had 2,000, 3,000, sometimes upwards of 4,000 play count per month, especially during that time between
Yeah.
2017 and 2018. So, how long were your sessions back then?
So, this kind of encompasses like my motivation to improve back from when I got 3 digits. So I'm just sort of going to go from there. Um, and I do have some screenshots that I did send them to you in DMs. I'm gonna send them in the general. So 0120, I followed them on Twitter. This was like when I just got my Twitter account, and I was following players, and I wanted to, I really wanted to push to be able to play in the World Cup. Like that was my big goal. Like I really want to play in the World Cup for the UK. And so
For
this was like,
context, Owen 20
okay,
was a United States player that played in the World Cup in 2015 when they won for the first time.
yes, yes. He was a very, very, very good hidden player, and you know, considering he had won OWC, I felt like you know I could get some good advice from him, and I'm gonna post them in here. I can't remember the exact dates. It has the dates on them. Yeah, this was October 2017.
Oh, wow.
So, and let me see when exactly when this play was. This was November 2017. So I was a 4 digit at this point. I was asking these questions. I was like, you know, what do you think it takes to get good enough for OWC?
Yeah, I want to
You
read
know,
your initial question. Basically, you asked, you said, would you mind if I asked your opinions on what it takes to be a good competitive player? And then you had a fairly lengthy conversation. This was through Twitter DMs, where, yeah, you can sort of summarize like what that conversation, or like sort of what the conversation talked about, and sort of what it meant for you and your progression.
yeah, yeah, of course. So obviously after that first tournament in July, I I felt like I could be really good, and it really motivated me to want to improve at the game. And then eventually I started reaching out, for example, to 0120, and I reached out to Doomsday at some point, but I don't recall where the messages are. You know, for types of advice. And yeah, so I said about your opinions on what it takes to be a good competitive player in terms of, you know, what it takes to be good at the high tournament level, right? You know, he'd obviously won the World Cup, and that's like the highest competitive level you can get, right? Even to this day. And I just wanted to know, like, mentality wise, what stuff I might want to play, how good I would actually need to be in terms of skill, like what should I be able to play, things like that. And as I said, like in the first screenshot, I from that point I've basically been an all rounder. Um, from that sort of late 2017 point, I've been like an all rounder. Um, purely because like I wanted to play in OWC, and like I knew you needed a lot of different skill sets to be able to play well in tournaments. Um, and yeah, again, like I was talking to other members of the community, because at that time I'd been introduced to people in the UK OSU community, and a really old top player, Bubby. He was really good at the game. He was like a hidden hard rock player back in like 2013. One of those like crazy old heads, and
I remember that
just
name
really,
actually. Not to be confused with Bubble Man. This is a different player, right?
yeah, yeah, entirely different player. I can't remember. He had like numbers after his name. I can't remember, but I was asking him, and he's like, because he was like better than me, so I was asking him like, oh, how did you get good? Do you think I can get there? Things like that. Um, and I just wanted to know, like, if the general like difficulty of scores that I was capable of doing was like good enough, right? That's what I meant by saying like PP, or like highest capable PP or whatever.
Yeah,
Because
I want
in a
to
in a linear sense, that determines difficulty.
I want to or sort of emphasize some of the messages that you had with 0-20 in these screenshots, where you were asking about if there's a specific milestone of like PP or rank that someone should hit before they can perform at a high level. And just for context, so basically 0-20 responded saying that like it's not quite one to one, since like PP is a lot different than your actual like consistency and performance in tournaments. But just to put a timeline on this, so this was late 2017 in early October, and at the time 0-20 responded saying if you want to do well in a World Cup type tournament, which is one of the highest tiers, you would probably want a 500 PP score, or maybe around 9,000 PP or higher. So yeah, at the time things were completely different.
That's insane to hear nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's completely crazy to hear nowadays.
So yeah, it actually, it's interesting. It seems like you were really into sort of like asking other top players for their thoughts on things, and like kind of getting that reassurance on like your current situation, and like how much more you would need to do to get to where you want to be. And it sort of seems like you are like the tables have turned, and now it's your turn to give that advice to the next up and coming players.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's such a weird feeling, right? S- Being able to look back at like where I was, the type of questions I was asking, the things I know now, right? And the experiences that I've had now, it's completely jarring. And I mean, it's crazy. I would have probably answered each question the exact same if I was 0-20.
How would you have answered?
Um,
Yeah, like I'm kind of curious, like you looking back at these questions that you asked back then, now that you've
yeah,
sort
it's
of
so
gone through
interesting.
everything, like how would you answer your own questions?
So from the start, what it takes to be a good competitive player, uh, you've got to be you've got to be diligent. You've got to want to win, right? If you go into a match assuming you're going to lose, then you're going to lose. And you know, while if you win, it's a good surprise. It's just an unhealthy mentality to have. Like, for example, if I'm, for, I mean, I played against you in the 2019 finals, right, in OWC.
Oh, right.
You guys were stomping everyone. You lost maybe 1 point throughout the whole tournament up until that point. I never thought at one point we were going to lose.
Ah, I
Like,
see.
literally at one point we were going to lose. We got 7-0'd, but the difference is, you have to have a winner's mentality to win, right? I
That's
assume you
true.
guys went into that match thinking you weren't going to lose, right?
That's true,
At one,
actually.
yeah, exactly. Like that's one of the more important things to me, anyway, personally, for my mental. And another thing as well is just having a good time. Like if you're tilting off the face of the planet, especially in like a team tournament, it's going to drag down on your team, and each player, whether they're the captain or like a vocal leader, has to lead by example anyway. At least that's how I see it for team games and such.
Yeah.
So, for example, um, in 2020 OWC, which people like to highlight as like a down year for the UK, we played against South Korea in the second round, and uh, in this example, Bubbleman had no idea where to go next, what to pick. We just lost a few points in a row. Um, Bubbleman wasn't confident in himself, and so I took the step to lead by example and say, okay, here's the plan. We're gonna do this. We're gonna be sure of ourselves. We have good scores on this. We have good enough players to beat this team on this. So we'll just do it and we'll go with the plan. And we did it, and it ended up working out. We did end up losing the match, but it instilled a lot of confidence in the team, knowing that we could take points in such dominant fashion against such a good team like that. I'm pretty sure Korea got like third that year, right? I
That sounds possible. I'm not actually sure. This was
Oh
2020?
no, fourth. It might have been fourth. I don't
Okay.
know, but they placed pretty highly as far as I remember. Um, but yeah, that type of mentality, I think, really aids you in being a good tournament player, and just not being too down on yourself. That's the main thing, even for solo play. Like if you get too down on yourself, you're gonna have no confidence in your ability, and you're not gonna achieve the potential that you're capable of. Right? You always have to have the mindset like, okay, this will pay off eventually. It will pay off eventually, and you might not see the results immediately. Whether it's you lose the tournament match or you choke your top play or whatever. Like, if you have the mentality where it's like, you know, I can enter as many tournaments as I want. I can play this map as many times as I want. I am going to fail. That is guaranteed, unless you're like Vaxie, right? But that's for another topic. But most people, myself included, are going to fail, are going to lose at some point, and you have to be okay with that and come back stronger.
So basically, sort of what I'm hearing is that it almost matters less your actual skill level. Obviously, it matters to
100%.
an extent,
Oh,
but
of course.
the real, like, what makes a truly competitive player is that mental fortitude to keep going even in sort of unfavorable matches or times
Of
where it just
course.
seems so hopeless.
How do you like? How do you think Fancy Lad got so good? Right.
True. Well, what makes you want to bring him up as a specific example?
Well, he has like the fastest improvement I've seen out of anybody ever, all time. Or like this guy, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Removing Emmerich from the equation,
Right.
like, yeah, I was a little envious at one point, I will admit. Um, but that was like pretty childish. I was very, I was very defensive about myself, and I was like, oh man, this guy's improving really quick. Like, all these like doubtful bad feelings came up, and I got like very envious of it. But then it helped my mentality afterwards, because it's like, oh, why do I need to feel these things? It's like I can just get better.
Right, right.
It's like, why would I worry about somebody overtaking me and being better than me, when it's like, just get better, lol. Like, I don't know.
So,
It helped my mentality a lot, I guess.
what would you say was the sort of reason as to like what made players like Fancy Lad improve so quickly? Would you say it was the sort of mental fortitude to just keep grinding over and over again?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, they, I, of course I'm speaking for him here, and I don't I don't know this 100% right, but I would assume that people like Fancy Lad just literally just play the game. Like, and thinking about it, that's how I got so good, right? It's you just play the game. You play to set a score you want to set, to improve what you want to improve, and you filter out like the external nonsense, right? Maybe getting jealous of somebody's top play, or being like how is this person getting so good so quickly, like, and getting blinded by all those things, and just focusing on yourself. That is probably some of the best advice I can personally give, because as soon as I started doing that, I was able to just be way better as like a player and person in general.
So then, what would you say is the value of asking for advice? So it seems like that's something that you actually spent a decent amount
Oh,
of time doing when you were relatively new. But yeah, I'm curious what the role of getting advice from other players is.
someone's always better than you at something. Doesn't matter if you're the best. Like, look at Emmerich, he's the best. Shimon's better than him at speed. You know? Like, look at Cookeasy back when he was reigning and absolutely nobody could touch him. Even today, like, people can't touch the skill that he has, right? Even Emmerich can't replicate some of the things he's able to do even now. And you look at those guys, and even those guys, people are better at something than them, right? So there's always more to learn. There's always more, you know, advice. There's always more points of view. There's always different ways about going about things, and like everybody's unique. Everybody comes up in a unique way, albeit there might be similar ways. It's all unique to the person, and they will have, excuse me, they'll have a unique insight into the game and into improvement and whatever. Just like I will, just like you will, just like any other player will.
So, what value can you get out of sort of hearing advice from other players as opposed to
Oh,
just kind of grinding
yeah.
the game yourself?
So it comes back to the point where I'm saying, like, everybody has a different point of view about things, right? For example, you can't solve a math equation, so you ask your friend, and he looks at it in an entirely different way that you do, sorry. And then you can learn from your friend about how they saw it to then look at problems in that way that you can't solve, if that makes sense. So, for example, I can't read this stream. Try reading it 4 notes at a time. Try reading 1 note ahead. Try playing it with easy. Try slowing it down. Like, all these different things and all these different methods of improving or getting good at something. Different players will have different things that help them, right? It's like you can't. It's like the whole you can't judge a fish by its tree climbing ability type of thing. Everybody's good at different things. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
And
right, right.
everybody learns differently. And I feel like the more information you accumulate, the better you're going to be, in the wider arsenal of knowledge you're going to have, which is going to aid your improvement. At least that's how I see it.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate a little longer, and I will ask you for things like reading. Maybe it makes sense that you can like look at things different ways, but for the more mechanical aspects of play, like stamina, speed, or even raw aim, like what is it exactly that you're solving, and what is it that hearing other people's advice can actually help with?
So it depends on what you're actually asking, right? Um, like, to think of some generic questions, it's like, you know, how do I improve my aim, right? There's the very simple answer, but then if you dive deeper into what that person's actually good at, for example, is their reading any good? Is their tapping on time? Is uh I don't know, is their area correct? Is their sensitivity correct? Do you know what I mean? Because, for example, in FPS games, a lot of like average players play with a sensitivity, like a mouse sensitivity that isn't optimal for them, right? And they don't realize it, and so they'll be hindered by it, or
How would you know?
just things like that.
How would you
So
know?
in so for the example in FPS games, right? Um, with the mouse sensitivity, there's like little tests you can actually do to see if your mouse sensitivity is correct for you, because everybody will have things that they're comfortable with, and how they like to play. Also, sorry for like going on so many tangents. I have lots of things I want to talk
Oh no,
about.
no,
So
this is good. I think this is exactly the answers that I'm looking for. But so it sort of sounds like it's less about, because I sort of want to re-emphasize it. It's less about
Mhm.
having the correct sensitivity necessarily, but more of having the correct one for you specifically.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
So because this also goes to the point of like people, oh, what skin do you use? What's your area? What stuff like that. It doesn't matter.
Well, there is a correct skin. It's your skin, isn't it?
Oh, well, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people seem to think so. Actually, a lot of people like the skin. I'm very happy. Shout out to Redo, by the way, goated skin creator. But yeah, no, not, like literally none of that stuff matters, right? It's all literally is all preference. You can get good with whatever skin, whatever area. It's just what's good for you specifically, right? Because what works for White Cat might work for you, right? But 99% of the time, it's just not going to work for you, because you'll have a different way of comfortably holding a pen, or maybe you don't even use a tablet and pen. So what's the point in trying to copy White Cat stuff? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I don't know. It's all in the individual, and I think in like a general improvement sense, a lot of things can be like a lot of basic logic can be applied, in my opinion, for like general improvement.
So yeah, it sort of sounds like you're focused a lot more on, or like the advice that you're getting is to figure out what other things you can experiment with potentially, especially
Mhm.
if you're feeling uncomfortable with your current play style.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, uh, what one of my claims to fame is that Vaxay and Bubbleman both asked me for advice on like streaming and like streams,
Ah, interesting.
which is yeah, that it's I don't know. It's something I'm very happy about, but also I'm very sad about, because they're both way better than me.
Oh
So
no. I see what you mean though, especially with like you can be overall better than someone, but if there's even one or two things that you can take from their and sort of pick their brain about specific skill sets, especially if they're better than you at that thing,
yeah,
then
of
there's
course.
always more you can learn. So it's more like finding the like hearing people give not really strategies per se, but like ways to think about what to focus on so
Yeah,
that like you could be stuck in a rut and like not really sure like what to focus on to improve next, things like that. But sort of hearing that advice from, or like I guess getting tips from other people on what to focus on can be really helpful no matter what level you're at.
yeah, exactly. And that I'm pretty sure that's how most people learn things anyway, right? Uh, in general, it's like you'll go to a YouTube video on a specific subject, or you'll read an article, or and this is a point of view from someone who's entirely different to you. For example, you might find some teachers in school that really do help you learn, right? They teach really well for you, right? But then the teacher in your next lesson, you don't learn anything, because they don't teach you the way you need to be taught, type of thing.
Right.
And for like each sort of situation that comes up in OSU, right? It's like, your aim, your tapping, your reading. Those are like the big three, right? Um, as you've put in the past, can all be broken down, very, very, very specifically. And each one of these things, I believe, I I believe like almost every player will have at least a slightly differing opinion on each one of those, like specific skills.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I did put that disclaimer actually in the very beginning of the video that is just like, I made this chart myself. This is how I see the game, and everyone sees it slightly differently. But
Yeah,
I did try to make it sort of general, like general truths that most people agree upon. But yeah,
that's good. Like I think that's a good thing, and I think generally a lot of people, especially top players, would agree on the same things. I just think a lot of them would see things a little bit differently, if
right,
that makes sense.
right.
They would have like their own view of it.
So I want to go back to tournament play a little bit and touch
Hmm.
on. Well, first of all, I would say, what is the relationship between your ability to perform well in single player and PP rankings versus your ability to perform well in tournaments?
I think, especially nowadays, it's important that your ability to perform in solo is at a high level before you perform in tournaments. Um, Bubbleman actually discussed this with us some time ago, and he urged us to just do generic farm to increase our skill cap. And honestly, I want to say that it worked like a lot. This is the type of advice that you pick up on. You'll get it once, and you'll be like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense. You'll hear like some simple advice, but then when you really dive deep into it, there's a lot of nuance to it. And specifically, just generic farm is one thing that I realized helps a lot in terms of skill cap, because if you look at almost every single rank 1 recently have all been specifically good at one skill set and then branched out to everything else. And that skill set is like farming, like high star rating, high skill cap, tapping aim. And then they branch out into every other skill set, like I don't know, low AR, alternating, hard rock streams, stuff like that. They all get really, really, really good at this high skill cap farm, and then branch out, and it made a lot of sense to me, because a lot of the UK players don't really like to farm, myself included. But I've noticed since I started to try really hard at farming PP, like my overall skill cap and my overall level has increased much more, especially on like stuff that you wouldn't normally associate farming with, like tech or just generally hard maps, like I don't know, Yomiuri Apparition off the top of my head, right? Um Also, sorry, I forgot like the original. Oh, solo to tournaments. There
Right.
we go. Right. So with the whole farming thing, just scrap farming for a second. You want to increase your skill level and your skill cap, but you also want to be able to play, the lower star rating stuff, right? So there is a differentiation between tournaments and solo, in the sense that a lot of people in solo only want to play at their peak skill cap, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
The people that don't want to play at their peak skill cap, like I don't know, like rank 1 farmers, score farmers, stuff like that, that's not like peak skill cap stuff. Um, Whereas a lot of the players in the game will just go for top players, go for top players, go for top players, keep trying to up their level. And I think in general, the players that leaderboard and rank 1 farm are generally better tournament players than the farmers, because you're already learning a wide variety of skills at a wide variety of levels, right? For example, Trail Mix is someone I think of when I say that. Trail Mix, really good tournament player, plays a huge amount of different maps. Um, Goes for rank 1s, plays all different kinds of mods, and he ends up being a really good tournament player because of it. On top of the fact that he also pushes his skill cap, which
So
I think
there's
sort
a
of adds up.
balance. There's a balance to
Yeah,
be had.
100%. 100%. And like I said, the main difference I think between tournaments and like solo play is just that slightly lower skill cap,
Like
like
requirement.
gameplay. Yeah,
It's
that's
it's
the difference.
such a unique perspective because I feel like a lot of people actually, or at least like, okay, so this was I think 2019 or so, or maybe 2020, when we got word that like Bubbleman was telling the UK team during World Cup tryouts that like everyone should go play PP farm maps and push their mechanical skill, and it was like such a different school of thought from
Yeah.
what we had
Oh, you
because
guys heard about that?
yeah, we did at the time, and
Damn.
we were like that's interesting, but like it's such a linear like I can see how it would work, but it's such a linear sort of approach to just sort of thinking about the like I don't know like there's so many other skill sets, and it's like
Yeah.
so then I want to ask if if someone wanted to be super high skill cap and also super well rounded. I feel like you probably already answered this earlier, but just to sort of
Yeah.
reiterate your answer, which one would you focus on first? Would you try to do well roundedness first and then push skill cap, or would you do like just hard push one skill cap without worrying about like well roundedness, and then from there you would branch out?
The latter. I would say the latter. Because I am an example of the former, which means I branched out into a lot of different skill sets early and never really pushed one specific thing. And so I never got as high ranked as I probably could have been with that type of effort that I was putting into everything else, right? So the reason I believe the latter is better, um, focusing really hard on skill cap, farming, getting as good as you can there, is because I mean it's tried and true. Look at Flying Tuna, look at Emrek, look at White Cat. Look at all these incredible players that pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, got rank 1 with one specific skill set, and then just started branching out and were almost immediately good at everything else with that same amount of effort, right? That's
Right.
that's the key point. They didn't just become that good because they excelled in that one skill set. They put the same amount of time and effort and experience and knowledge from that one skill set into the other skill sets. Because if you get to a world class level in one skill set, you can get to a world class level in all other skill sets because you have the knowledge, you have the improvement experience required, right? And in my opinion, that's how people like Tuna and, Vaxe, Emrek, Whitecat got as good as they did and as well rounded as they did. That's my opinion anyway. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of people find themselves sort of they start to stagnate when they start trying to branch out and polish all of these different skill sets instead of just focusing on getting one of them all the way to the top and then having that as like a really solid anchor to bring everything else up to that level.
Yeah, 100%.
So I want to start focusing on a bit more like practical or like actionable stuff with specific skill sets. So I think I want to start with tapping, since you mentioned that some of the tournament giants in this game have come to you for your wisdom. So maybe you can bestow that same wisdom upon us. So what are some of your, I guess, general bits of advice when it comes to improving your tapping specifically, and like any actionable like processes that you can follow or things that you feel like really work well for a lot of people?
First, learn how to alternate. Just full stop, learn how to alternate. Because that, by far, is the most useful skill you can probably have, aside from good reading, in my opinion.
And full alternate being like being able to start and stop either any pattern with any finger.
Yes,
and just
basically.
perfectly like doing one press with one finger and then switching to the other like perfectly through the entire map.
Well, I wouldn't say that specifically. I would say learn how to start anything on any finger.
Okay.
So learn how to go from single tapping jumps with your index to starting a burst with your middle finger, or single tapping jumps with your middle finger and starting a burst on your index, or starting jumps on your index, starting bursts on your index, and the same for your middle finger, right? In my opinion, it's really important to sort of have that locked down in your head as just muscle memory. So no matter if you get caught up in a map, like you misread something, your tapping just catches up automatically because you have the muscle memory of being able to tap anything with any finger, if that makes sense. And as well, this is why I think Cookeasy is so good and so consistent, because the level of his mechanics, like his reading is so good that if his tapping or his aim fails, his reading just picks up and he can play the pattern again automatically, or he can pick it back up. And his aim is so good that if his reading fails, his aim will just carry him. If that makes sense.
I was like, he has such a raw, like high mechanical ability.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Learning how to do like every type of sort of pattern, if that makes sense. You know, playing a lot of I know Idke definitely used this for stamina, and it definitely works for finger control as well. Playing maps with uh complex rhythm, you know, not just playing like the long stamina stream maps as like a benchmark. That, in my opinion, those are only benchmarks, by the way. Those like long stamina maps. It's like if you can stream 1,000 notes of a BPM, that like you don't need to do any more than that, right? You know how to stream that BPM,
Right.
especially if it's like 99% AC, right? You know how to stream that BPM. But the way to really get good tapping and good stamina and stuff like that is to play these maps where it's like triple triple double single taps into a quint, or stuff like that,
Right.
right? Just more complex than your triple triple triple, or just bursts, like single taps into a 5 note burst or something like that. Yeah, like quads into doubles. I know a lot of people struggle with. Um, but yeah, all those types of patterns really help your finger control and your finger independence, which is, in my opinion, a really important skill to have with your tapping. And the best players I think I've ever seen do that are Bubbleman and Akoro. With like the whole finger independence, finger control thing. Those are the two best players I've ever seen at that, and it just blows my mind, especially Akoro.
So then, what's the relationship between finger control and streaming ability?
So I know people have heard Emmerich complain about this, right? Where uh it's like about starting bursts on a specific finger, or um oh sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, like starting bursts on a specific finger is difficult for them, or something of that nature. But if you get so comfortable to the point where you don't have to worry about your tapping, where you don't get caught up, you don't start finger locking, then you're going to play a lot better because you can focus more on the aim aspect, which arguably is more important because you need to actually move your cursor to the note, right? To
Oh,
actually
okay.
tap it. And I think a lot of stream players will tell you that getting to the point where you don't need to focus on your tapping, where it's just automatic, is the best point you can get to at any certain BPM, right? So if you're playing these like, maps with complex rhythms, with like the doubles and the triples and the quads, from single taps or something, and you're just doing it automatically, like you're not straining too much, um, you're not finger locking all over the place, you have decent accuracy, then that's a really good point to be at because you can just focus on the aim, and that will carry you through the map essentially.
Okay, so like overall tapping comfort so that you can start putting that sort of finger control aspect of it on autopilot.
Yeah, yeah.
I see. Okay, so then are there specific ways that you feel like work best for pushing stream stamina in particular, aside from that finger control aspect? Like, let's say you have really, really good finger control, but
Mhm.
your stamina is just really not there. What exactly
It's
would you say?
it's brute force and technique. So this, is ideally not the best way to go about things, but when I was learning how to do streams, you'll see my most played map is Blue Zenith. About like 700 of those plays are just me as like a, below average player just trying to play it. Like, and I eventually just learned how to tap, if that makes sense. It's so stupid, and do not take after that because that's not the right way to do it if you want to improve quickly. Um, but it's,
Oh, what is the right
in my
way?
opinion, it's brute forcing it. KHZ is a really good person to look to, um, but I think his method is too slow. in my opinion. But if you want perfect technique and you want, because I'm pretty sure this is what Bubbleman did, right? So back when he was asking me for advice on his streams, like he wasn't able to tap streams properly, like his stream aim was off and he just couldn't do it properly. So he literally restructured his entire tapping technique from years of muscle memory, starting at square one, like with 150 BPM streams and bursts, playing space streams, like low BPM space streams on half time, just really like actively fixing his tapping mechanics, going from square one, very low BPM, and then scaling it up. That's, I think, the KHZ method. But for me, that's a little bit too slow, and I'm not really bothered about having perfect tapping technique and having that just perfection, right? I'm not too bothered about that. As long as I'm good enough to get by, I think and I think I'm doing pretty okay so far, right? Um, but yeah, with that, I think it's literally just brute forcing it, like just trying a BPM. You know, for example, this is where I would go to. I don't know if I can stream 180, like if I can stream Ice Angel, right? No problem, 99%, no stamina issue. I'd just go straight to 200 from there because what Ice Angel's like, what is it, 185,
168.
190, 168.
Yeah.
Wow, is it really that low?
Yep. Ice
Damn.
Angel's
Well, if I
pretty
can do
low.
okay, if I can do 170, right? Let's just round it up. If I can do 170, I'd go straight to 190. Like I'd just skip 180. Like I wouldn't do it in such low increments because if you've got the technique, right? And Cookiezi gave this advice actually in 2015 or 20 was it? No, 2017. Cookiezi gave this advice in 2017 on the Happy Stick improvement month. I remember because I watched every interview. He said if you can do something at a low BPM, you can do it at a high BPM. You just need to be faster, right? And that's the type of like simple sounding advice that has a lot of nuance that I was talking about before, right? Because if you think about it, maps with double time are the exact same map as they were with no mod, right? And
Ah.
and back in the day, HVic would used to play. So if you go to all of HVic's classic top plays, he has like an SS with no mod.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
single one of them. Every single one of them. He has an SS with no mod. The map is the exact same aim, exact same tapping. You're just doing it faster, right? So that's why I really like the method of just improving your skill cap by using speed up maps, if that makes sense.
Right,
So
like
like
rate changes.
yeah, rate changes. That's the one. I think that's a really really good method of improving your skill cap
So
because
I
these
just want
maps
to
aren't
add
meant to be at that BPM. Yeah, no, go ahead.
things like OC Trainer, ways that you can
Yeah,
increase the
hundred
speed of the
percent,
map. It's a free program. You can
100%.
just Google OC Trainer. It should be the first result. Those listening who don't have it. But yeah,
Shout out to Fun Orange, by the way.
Fun Orange is a beast. Yep.
I think rate changing genuinely is like one of the best ways to improve. I mean, going back to like how Bubbleman was sort of restructuring his, whole tapping style and trying to improve from square one, especially with tapping. He would use a lot of rate changes. Even moving up the BPMs, was doing rate change maps like Anomaly, the Akali map, or another Akali map, the Rolling. He would do like 1.2x speed,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
stuff like that, and I mean, from the man himself, it really helped push his skill cap, and uh, I wholeheartedly agree. It's helped me do the same thing. Although I don't do it as much as probably should. It's genuinely really fun to do. Like for example, oh my god, I just beamed into my brain information that Vaxe told me. Um, so I'll quickly say this. So Vaxe told me, and this is a really really good thing. He told Abyssal this as well. Um, to play hard rock on maps you're good at with no mod, or maps that you can do with no mod, right? So for example, if I can FC, I don't know, just for example, some random 8-star map, right? Some random 8-star no mod map It's got your usual jump streams, whatever. Playing stuff like that with hard rock really helps increase your skill cap because it's the same difficulty of map, just you have to tighten your mechanics a lot more in terms of tapping and aim and reading to be able to actually play it properly. And it
Yeah.
really, really improves your mechanics.
I remember hearing that something similar from Vaxay as well. Just like play more hard rock basically, but
Yeah.
only if it's already comfortable with no mod, and
Yes.
also you kind of have to reach that point of like this is more for like advanced players, I guess quote unquote advanced, but like people that
Yeah.
have already broken into being able to play hard rock on some stuff. So we're not saying that like you have to jump straight into hard rock immediately, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, uh, although it's all preference, right? You play the game how you want to play. Um, and all I'm saying here, and all Habib saying here, all the other top players are saying here is just advice, right? It's just their experience with the game, what they've learned, what they know, to be true for at least for themselves. It's all just advice and anecdotes, really, and genuinely just play the game how you want to, right? If you seriously want to improve, I believe there are correct ways to go about that as quickly as possible.
I
Like
was
if that's
actually
your goal.
Yeah, I was just
Oh,
about to ask that specific question. So let's say I'm someone with infinite free time. I'm in grade school, whatever have you, and
hmm
I want to get so good at OSU like as fast as possible. I just want to improve as fast as possible. What advice would you give to someone like that?
Most important thing is to take breaks for a person like that. 100%. So for me, I I was a person like that back when when that whole year happened where I went from like whatever rank to 2 digit, right? That year was my most playtime, so it's like February 2019, I think. If you go to my play count, should be one of
2019? I
those.
thought it was like
Oh,
2017.
2018. 2018. February 2018. So from 2017 to late 2018. That year was like my most play count, I think, in a year. Um, I was playing maybe
All right, in a month.
five. Yeah, yeah,
Most of it in a month.
yeah. But I mean, over that whole year as
Oh,
well,
okay.
I
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
I was, I was playing like a lot, and I think that's how I got so good. You can see that in players like Shearman and stuff with really high play count. But I was playing like 5, 6 hours a day, just really pushing skill cap. Basically, I was just trying to get better and better scores, trying to improve, trying to do harder and harder maps. Like, especially like early on, before I was getting into this really serious stage, I would always just aim to be able to pass the highest difficulty of a map set. That would always be the goal. I would always just want to. It's like back when Cookies used to do like F2 streams where he would just F2 randomize maps and get rank 1 on it and go to the next map, right?
Yep.
It was like that, but with me just trying to get good enough to pass the top difficulty of the map. Um, and I think that definitely sort of helped because I always had that sort of drive to be able to at least play the hardest difficulty of the song, and it sort of translated over because I was playing 5, 6, 7 hours in a day, and I would go to sleep, wake up the next day, and suddenly I've just improved way more, and I can just play way better. You know, get higher PP scores, get higher star rating FCs, do all this, and that's because like I was playing a lot, and I was, and this is one thing I say. This is like my really concise definition of play more, because I know of course that's like a huge discussion topic, right? Play more. My the really concise sort of statement I give as to what play more is consistently and appropriately challenging yourself. That's how I see play more. And again, play more is an example of very simple advice that when you look into it has a lot of nuance, right? I feel like a lot of really top players all throughout anything, even in like real life sports, like football, basketball, or like Counter Strike, right? A lot of these top players will give really simple advice that when you look into it is really nuanced, and it's the same for play more. It's the same for you know just look at the notes or something, right? It's the same for all that. You look into it, and there is nuance to it, and that's what I mean by consistently and appropriately challenging yourself, because you see a lot of these players where it's like, I've been playing for 4 years, but I've stagnated, I've not really improved. But have you been challenging yourself? This person's most likely just been playing a similar range of difficulties throughout their entire sort of playtime, right? And of course, if you have fun doing that, then that's amazing, right? More power to you. But if you're specifically looking to improve, then doing that is not good, right? And the reason why I say appropriately challenge yourself as well is because certain players will consistently challenge themselves, but way too hard. And I think you might find this as a theme, right? Of top players telling people to stop playing stuff that's just way too hard for them because they're not going to improve. And it holds true, right? You're not going to get as good as, I don't know, for example, someone like Bubbleman, if you're just spamming 9-star jump maps all day and you're getting like 70%, like passes.
Right.
Like you're just not gonna get. You might get good at passing really high star aim maps with low AC, but like, if you want to improve at the core, like the game at its core, then that type of playstyle isn't going to work. And this is why I say appropriately challenge yourself consistently, because an appropriate challenge, for example, to me, is if I play a map, like if I'm sight reading a map and I get single digit miscount, that is infinitely more improvable, like in terms of improving your skill as a player, than sight reading and getting a C rank with 50 misses, right? You might be able to immediately improve that to a B rank with 20 misses, but how quickly are you going to get that to an FC, right? Whereas an appropriate challenge to me is, again, if I go play this map, I get 9 misses. I'm like, okay, I try this map again. I maybe get a little bit higher combo, couple of less misses, 7 misses, right? Come back to that map every now and then, do my usual other maps, trying to challenge myself. Come back to this map, and then, this is. I'm saying it very linearly. Of course, it doesn't always work like this, but in a sense, this is how I did it basically. And it's very easy to improve upon plays like this, where you get 9 misses and you play it again, you get 7, you play it again, you get 3, played a few more times, UFC, right? And of course, like I said, that's very linear, but it works for me.
That's actually interesting. So what I'm sort of hearing is you want to push yourself on maps that are like just barely out of reach to FC, and it almost seems like FCing the map is sort of the standard that you should set for yourself.
100%. And I don't want to say just barely, because if it's just barely, then it's too slow of an improvement. Like if you're going up like 0.1 star or something, right?
Right.
Because for the average player, they look at like star rating to determine like the level of maps they should be playing, right? So, for example, if you can FC like a 5.4 star map and you go to a 6-star map and you get like 4 misses, you can FC that map. 100% you can FC that. If you get 4 misses, of course you can FC it, right? So, for example, with me, when I was like a 5-digit, right, and I was playing, I remember my first 200 PP score was 244 PP, which was like 60 PP ahead.
Oh.
And
okay.
Yeah. And because I would always try and FC these maps that were like too hard for me at the time, but not so hard to the point where I literally just couldn't play them at all. Right? I could pass the maps with like, let's say 96, but I would play them over and over and over again to the point where I could FC them. And that improved me as a player a lot more, because I was getting maybe like 180 PP plays, and then I saw this map and it was like almost like I'm pretty sure it was Bearism's Blade Dance top diff was my first 200. Let me see.
I feel like that's interesting that you mentioned that like going for FCs is kind of what you should strive for before pushing yourself to the next barrier, because I've heard different sort of opinions about this. I think Ryuke in his speed talk, for example, really emphasizes pushing for A ranks, and like taking maps that you can like just barely like you can play and you can do okay, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. And maybe you're probably getting around a B rank or something around that range and kind of
Yeah,
pushing yourself up to be able to play an A rank or get an A rank consistently.
yeah. I think that's more for like, in my opinion, that advice is for more advanced players because when you're learning the fundamentals of the game, you're going to build a lot of habits, and you want to build a habit of consistency early. Is what I've learned at the very least. Because, for example, if you look at me as a player, I've always been consistent on no mod maps, right? If you look at my no mod scores in tournaments or my no mod scores on my profile, I've always been consistent at no mod. And that's because I set the groundwork for that when I was improving. I decided, because of those happy stick interviews back in 2017, to learn low AR reading to improve my general aim consistency. Right, I'm gonna get into that in a second. And then I would play maps that I was comfortable on, like longer maps that I was just comfortable on, and try and FC them in one try. And I would always do that, and I would build this habit of consistency to reduce my nerves. And I know obviously people like Idkey Whitecat give this advice all the time, right? It's play maps all the way through to get consistency. And that's what you should do. That's the habit that you should build. Because if you're constantly retrying, not seeing the rest of the map, and not getting accustomed to playing those patterns, you're not going to be as consistent, and you're not going to improve as quick, in my opinion.
That's actually a really interesting distinction. I never quite thought of how like you sort of want to focus, like you want to push skill cap in slightly different ways when
Yeah,
you're more of a new player versus after you've sort of developed a solid foundation for yourself of skill level and you really start pushing yourself more and more.
yeah, 100%. Because you see, so like, and sorry to just add this on,
No, you're good. You're
but
good.
you will see a lot of top players, for example, Emrek, doing like 11-star maps that he gets like C and B ranks on, or well, maybe like 12 now, but 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 that once you have the fundamentals of the game, is perfectly fine to do, right? It's just you don't do that early on, and especially when you're not good at the game in the sense of top player good, or you know maybe like 4-digit, 3-digit good, right? Because those players have the fundamentals, right? They have the tapping, they have the aim. It's just the people higher ranked than them they're just better at those skills. But those people also have the fundamentals, right? Whereas if you're like a 5-digit, you're the average player. You don't want to be building these bad habits, because it's gonna. I mean, Zootinate said this in her interview yesterday, right? She built bad tapping habits from when she was like a really new player that she still has today, right? So if you imprint these good habits early, for example, playing maps all the way through, gaining consistency, learning how to read, like reading is the most important skill out of anything, because you can't aim or tap or do anything very well if your reading is bad, right? So in my opinion, building these good habits early and these good fundamental skills early is really really good for your progression. Although there have been players known to just brute force this entirely, right? Of course, this is my opinion on based on how I improved, right? And how I logically see improvement. But there have been players who've contradicted that. For example, Emrek, who just for some reason is the best player I've ever seen ever of all time in history on the planet. Like, you
Right.
that's like the anomaly, right? That's the anomaly. Not everybody is going to be Emrek. Not everybody's going to be Whitecat. Not everybody's going to be like that level of just raw talent, right? Not everybody's going to have that. And some people, it takes them a while to improve. But yeah, I don't know. I think for your future as a player, if you want to get really good, I think building fundamentals, like basic fundamentals, is a key part to it. And this also takes me to another like method Bubbleman gave to us to practice, and that was to, before an important World Cup match, to warm up on low star maps, like 5-star maps. And what this does is essentially gives you a little bit more consistency in terms of reading. It's like, for example, if you play with a tablet and you then start playing with a mouse, if you played tablet your whole time and then you decide to play the game with a mouse, it forces you to read a lot more like you have to focus a lot more to read, essentially. And it really dials your reading in, especially with these lower star rating maps. It really translates to when you're playing, the star rating that you're used to. For example, if you're used to playing 6 stars, if you warm up on 4 stars, right, it'll give you a really good base. Your tapping will, be accustomed to lower BPMs, which I think is, again, like, so important. How are you going to consistently tap high BPM if you can't do low BPM type of thing, right? Um, God, there's so much in my head. I wanna talk about.
So I'll stop you for 1 second because someone asked
Yeah,
a
no, go ahead.
question related to this. So they said, by what time do you consider fundamentals to be built? Is it like being able to FC high 6 stars consistently, or is it something that doesn't even have to do with star rating? Or yeah, what would you consider as having your fundamentals be built, quote unquote?
So I would say, that's a really good question. I think I think there is a certain point. I don't know specifically, but I think there is a certain point where you understand the fundamentals of the game a lot better than other players. And I would typically, I would probably say around, if you become like around 4 digit, I think you understand the game enough to know, right?
That's really
Um,
far, actually.
sort of,
Interesting.
yeah, because I don't think the average player, like 5 6 digit, really gets the game at all. Like, even 4 digits, like, even me, like, I don't think I get it at all, because there's guys just hundreds of times better than me, right? And I'm in the top 0.001% or whatever. Like, I don't even think I fully understand the game yet. And that's one thing I've noticed throughout my years of improvement. At each sort of like stage, for example, like 5 digit, 4 digit, 3 digit, I understand the game and what goes into it a lot more than I did before. Even being like a top player for so long, right? I've been in and around top 100 for like 4 years at this rate, and every year I've gained new understanding. I've learned something new, but I've been the same rank and the same relative skill level, if that makes sense, right?
Right.
Compared to everyone else. But I've learned so much more when my fundamental skills improved, if that makes sense.
I think
It,
the real answer that I'm hearing is that like it's never quite built. There are
yeah,
points where it starts to become more proficient, but there's never like a true like finish
I
line.
th- I think there is definitely a point where you can say that you have good fundamentals, though, and
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I would presumably say like around 4 digit. Like, you can't really put a number on it, right? You can't really put a definitive, quantifiable rank or placement on, when your fundamentals are good, because you could just farm and get 4 digit, right, and have like 93% ac aim scores. You know, I would I would say if your profile accuracy is above 98% and you're a decently high rank, like 4 digit, 3 digit, then I think you're doing something right. No, like, I think no matter what skill set you're in, you have good fundamentals for it. If your accuracy is above 98% in general.
Interesting. So you sort of use accuracy as that measure, even on like the high skill cap maps.
Well, I wouldn't like, maybe not the highest skill cap maps, but it
The
goes
ones that
it
are in
goes
your top
pretty
place.
high. Yeah. So, for example, me, right? You have to take the map's relative difficulty into account, right? So, for example, if you go to my top plays, you see Sunglow, right? And that's like 98.6, 99.01. And then my next top play is Freedom Dive, 98.82. You should be getting that type of accuracy, like 98 to 99 and higher on
On your top
on
place,
plays.
basically.
Yeah, 100%. And, if the map is like really hard, it is. I want to find a different word to acceptable, but it's acceptable to have that accuracy drop. For example, like, and I know people are sick of me talking about this score, but my apparition score, right, is one of the only maps in my top players with less than 98% ac. The other ones are like speed maps or AR11 maps. So yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to say, but accuracy, I think in general, and I think Bubbleman put this really well. In because Bubbleman did like an improvement series on YouTube, right? You should go check that out, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Um, he put it really well. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said he always tries to hit every note perfectly, right? No matter if his accuracy throughout the whole map is like 94, he's going to try his best to hit each pattern and each note accurately, as it's supposed to be hit. And I think if you're doing that consistently, like if you're hitting everything as it's supposed to be hit, you're getting good accuracy, you're not finger locking all the time, you're not misreading everything, then I think you have a good base to start branching out and start challenging yourself a lot more, if that makes sense. Also, I want to say this. You're not going to be good at everything immediately. Like, I feel like this is really important to say. You are not going to be good at something immediately. Some people learn quicker than others, and that's true in everything. However, right, do you think Emrek got so good at speed just overnight? No, he didn't. He put in the hours, he put in the work, and now he's an absolute demon on speed, right? How do you think, again, for example, I did apparition, right? How do you think I did that? That's from years of, learning how to do that BPM, how to get that stamina, how to control my nerves, how to single tap fast, how, it's years of building up these different fundamental skills and practicing these maps over and over and over again to be able to achieve a score like that. It's not just, oh, hop on one try, whatever, right? You will be able to do things like that after you've put in the work, right? You will be able to go in, just open up your session, warm up a little bit, and one try a really good score. You will be able to do that, but in order to get to that level, you need to put in the work to improve whatever skill that is to be good enough to do that, right? For example, when I started to learn how to stream, I said earlier in the interview, I would just hopelessly try the top diff of Blue Zenith over and over again and get like 60% AC and have no stamina, no knowledge of how to tap it properly, right? And I mean, that's clearly not the case now, right? I had to put in a lot of time and effort to be able to get good at that. Especially with DT as well. I never played DT until, properly, like farming DT until like 2020, maybe. Not even that.
After you were already 2-digit.
Yeah, because like, it's such a funny thing. I got 2-digit playing like no mod and barely hard rock, which was like insane. But I never really focused like high, DT to the level that I focused no mod and hard rock at, if that makes sense. And then when I did, it was really frustrating because all my peers, were playing, all people around my same rank were playing DT and were getting these high PP plays, and I was like, but I was getting frustrated, like, but I'm the same level as these guys, like I'm the same rank, like we're around the same level of player. Why can't I do this? And I was getting really frustrated, and it really makes you like learn and understand that it's like, okay, how am I supposed to be good at this if I've not built it up, right? These players have probably played DT since they were 5 digits, right? I might have played it here and there until now, Whereas they might look at my scores and think, wow, like how does he do, I don't know, Uta or something, right? How does he do that? Well, I've been playing no more consistency, it's all relative, and you shouldn't be frustrated when you're not good at something new, right? That's some of the best advice I can give, I think.
Yeah, I'm really glad you emphasized that because I feel like it's something that sounds obvious when you put it into words like that, but it's like a lot of people don't quite recognize like just the sheer volume of practice that all these players have put in. Even the ones that improved quickly, like they didn't, just because you improved quickly doesn't mean you didn't practice to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a lot of behind the scenes that people don't see, right? How do how do you think LeBron James is so good at basketball? Like this guy spent his whole life in gyms. You know, you see him on TV and it's like wow, you know, crazy. But what you don't see is that he's spending the majority of his time in a gym shooting a basketball, right? And it's the same, I don't know, with like Emrek. You know, he might have streamed a lot of his upbringing in the OSU community, right? But you know, you won't have seen the countless hours of practice he's put into his aim, into his speed, whatever, right? You see the fruits of his labor, if that makes sense. You you see the good things, and you think, okay, he's just at this point, like naturally, if that makes sense. It's like a
Right.
psychological thing, you know. You don't see or understand the work that's been put in to get to this point. You just see this point, right? You
Yep.
just see what is now, not what was before or what led to now. And I think it's really important to sort of check yourself and understand, like, okay, these people, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? There's the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. And none of these players got as good as they did without putting in hours and hours and hours and hours of work. So, you know, play more, I guess.
Yes, very well said. I do want to switch gears a little bit to
Of
something
course.
you mentioned earlier, which is that reading you mentioned is the most important skill in the game. So
Hmm.
I'm curious if you could elaborate on that, and also if you can sort of just talk about the relationship between reading and aim.
Yeah. Well, I think to highlight the importance of reading, you need to include its relationship to the other fundamental skills of the game, right? So reading is always something that is going to be apparent, right? No matter if you've just picked up the game today or you started 7 years ago, right? You are going to be reading the notes on the screen. That it's a constant thing, right? And with its relationship, like to explain how important it is, its relationship to aim and tapping is that with aim you need to read as well. Like you're not just aiming, and with tapping you need to tap as well, right? You need
Right.
to read as well as tapping,
Right.
and they they're like hand in hand. Reading is hand in hand with like everything you're doing. So if you're not able to comfortably read the AR you're playing, your aim is going to be off. You might be tapping really hard and not understanding the rhythm, not hitting the notes accurately or how they were intended to be hit. Um, your consistency is going to be overall a lot worse because of these, you know, misreads. And it's important because you hear people have mind blocks, right? And you know, I saw something really. I can't remember who or where I heard it, but it was very recently. It might have even been in here, but somebody said like when you're playing something over and over again, your brain like filters out unnecessary things, and sometimes it filters out necessary things, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And that's what a mind block is. But intrinsically, that's to do with reading, right? It's just that suddenly you're not reading it correctly. That's why people look at these things in the editor, right? And you know, if you take your time with these movements, or if you, for example, slow it down, play it with half time, or just look at it slower, um, I don't know, maybe lower the AR, right? And this is what I meant by I said I improved my aim by learning low AR. So the whole reading aspect of aim is so important, and I figured that out by learning low AR because what playing, for example, easy, right, like AR4, for example, taught me was to play the notes correctly, not to not to leave the note too early with my aim, not to go to it too early, not to tap it too late, not to tap it too early, you know, to actually play them perfectly because the note lock is so, you know, intense, if that makes sense. On lower AR maps, especially easy, it essentially forces you to play the map as it was intended. And what that does is, once you translate that to playing your standard AR 9 to 10, right? If you've gone from playing easy on AR 4 to playing your standard AR 9 to 10, what that does is automatically your brain, at least it did to mine, and people who I've suggested this to, um, you just automatically stay on the notes and read everything correctly because you're so used to such a a dense pack of notes on your screen. Once it then opens up and the AR is a lot higher, you make sense of everything a lot quicker. You're able to process things a lot quicker. You're able to actually hit the notes as they were intended. And this makes a lot of sense in my head. I don't know if I'm articulating it properly. I'm trying to say it as simple as I can.
Yeah, that if I can reassure you that I think that wording makes so much sense. And
Yeah,
just
thank you.
the way I sort of see it is that when you're playing lower AR, you have no choice but to actually read the patterns more clearly. And so
Mm-hmm.
practicing in that environment where you're forced to read patterns clearly and not, I guess, get complacent or lazy with your reading, you go from that environment to one that doesn't require as much reading per se, but it's like typical maps. You can get away with having pretty sloppy reading, but it's going to come at the cost of just being way less consistent. But if you
Yes.
trained yourself in that environment of basically having no choice but to actually dissect all the patterns on the screen, you then go over to your typical ARs and everything's just so much clearer. Not because, well, yeah, I guess mostly because you've trained yourself to really read patterns in as
Yeah.
clear of a way as possible.
And I see a comment. I tried low AR and ended up just memorizing. That's exactly what I did. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't learn how to hit the pattern in some way, right? Whether that be memorizing. I'm pretty sure that's what most top players do on hard maps anyway. That's what you're doing. And again, I'm just going to keep using this map as an example. Apparition, right? I memorize where I need to start single tapping and where I need to start the stream again, right? I memorize those things. I memorize where the triples are, in the music. Like I practice these things, and memorization has a part in reading. It 100% does. And it's not just for the gimmick stuff. It's not just for flashlight. It's not just for things like that. Memorization is like a key part of Osu, right? And once you start memorizing these, lower AR maps, for example, if you play one map over and over again, low AR, you're going to memorize it, but then once you memorize it, you're going to be able to make sense of it, right? And thus, moving on to future maps, you will be able to make sense of that a lot quicker than you were able to before, right?
Yep.
And I think that's what really helps, because then automatically your aim consistency will just improve and your reading will just be way better.
So I'm curious to
Yeah.
ask, is there anything special or different that you need to start doing to go from like a top player to like one of the best in the world? Like what's the difference between like S tier and SS tier? Is it just doing more of those same principles of pushing yourself, or is there something unique that you need to have or that you need to start doing once you reach that level in order to get to the very, very top?
Yeah, that's a very, very loaded question. Okay, so I have a few answers for this.
Okay,
And I'm
I
gonna
think
quickly.
just to let you know, I think this will might be one of the last questions, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Okay, cool. I believe that people who are younger will improve quicker, just in general. If they apply those principles, they will improve quicker than someone my age.
What's the reason? Would you say?
Um, children's brains are more adept at learning. They're more built for it. They're more malleable, you know?
Like plastic, it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they they can just they're just built for learning quicker, right? And of course I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a scientist, right? But that just makes a lot of sense to me personally, right? Why someone would improve so quickly and, relating to their age. But, right, that doesn't mean all hope is lost, right? You have people, for example, like Carthy, who when he was top 5 was like 26,
Yeah,
27
I think that's
when
right.
he was top 5. So in a sense, yeah, it is just keep challenging yourself, applying those same principles, and you will improve. But it gets much, much, much harder once you're at a higher level to, as I mentioned before, to sort of get those bursts of improvement. Um, and I think as well, especially if you're older, but that's like an entirely different subject.
I feel like that probably relates to just having the free time to dedicate every single day,
Yeah, you have to
month
play a
after month.
lot though, especially at this level. Like you have to play a lot. You know, Shimon is like the main example. You look at that guy's play count. Oh my god, that's an unfathomable amount of play count over like the last 3 years, 4 years maybe.
Oh yeah, basically averaging between most months are hitting 5,000, 6,000,
Yeah.
especially throughout 2021 and late 2020. And there's a peak in late 2019 where he was getting like 7,000, 8,000 around that number
hmm
per month, which is, as you mentioned, just absolutely absurd.
I think that's like the upper boundary of, like that's like the upper extreme, right? I think, there's obviously examples of like a lower extreme. You have players like Ciccone who are now insanely good when they barely have like 50k play count or something, you know? And like I said, people improve at different rates, right? But as long as you're playing and learning the correct way for you, right? As long as you're playing the game to improve in the best way that you're receptive to, if that makes sense. Whether that is playing 6 hours every day, um, or it's playing a couple of hours uh, multiple times a day, stuff like that. But one thing, the most important thing to improving, right, is of course playing a lot, but taking the breaks, right? Because if you don't take breaks, your brain is going to be so overloaded with information, and you're going to be fried. Like you might go into a slump. You might start performing worse than you were before, and you might be questioning why. But like burnout is a real thing, and that happens when you're just doing too much, right? So you need to take a break to let your brain absorb the information from your play session, from your week, from whatever, right? You need to take that time to let your brain absorb the information, the muscle memory, the reading, all that.
I feel like I want to re-emphasize your point that or I guess to target the question more specifically, like as you reach the top, it's just so much harder to get to that next level, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I feel like the best analogy I can use for this is in any MMO or game with like a leveling system, like Pokemon or RuneScape or anything like that. Lower levels, it takes a lot less experience points to level up. And then as
Yeah.
you progress more and more, the amount of experience that's required is not only the amount of experience that's required is really high, or it gets higher and higher, but also the level and difficulty of the sort of creatures that you need to be fighting to get those experience points get
Yeah, that's a
just
good analogy.
way crazier. So yeah, I feel like that sort of understanding that scaling, and also I think more specifically when you so in Pokemon at least, it's like if you, let's say you're level 20 and you're fighting something that's level 24. Okay, so if you're level 20, you're fighting someone that's level 20, it'll give you around the same amount of experience. And then if you're under level compared to the enemy, it'll give you a slight bonus. And then if you're over level compared to the enemy, it'll actually give you a little less. So I feel
Yeah.
like that concept actually applies in OSU for one, but also pretty much any skill
Yeah,
that's out there.
anything improvement wise, right? You know, if you're against something, if you're doing something that's, you know, uh, higher than your current skill level, you're going to improve by doing that thing, right? And you know, that's just how it works for anything. Because people always ask me like, you know, and this is like a very very simple answer, but people always ask me like, oh, how did you get so good at streams, right? It's like I just played a lot of stream maps, right?
Right.
I just focused in, played a lot of stream maps, and sometimes it is as simple as that, right? It's how do I get good at low AR? You just start grinding low AR, you know, and sometimes it is just as simple as that.
Yeah, I think that the tricky part is knowing where you're currently at and what difficulty you need to be pushing yourself at.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely requires a lot of intuition and some logical thinking, but once you sort of get the hang of it, it's like, okay, you will start to understand the type of maps that you can challenge yourself with and the type of maps that you really can't challenge yourself with as of yet, you know?
Right,
It's
right.
like trying to unlock the next boss fight type of thing. It's like, oh, I can't pass this map at all. I'm gonna have to train really hard and then come back to it later and
Yeah.
then I'll be able to, you know, yeah.
You know what that actually, if I can expand on that, like unlocking the next boss sort of thing, it's like if you're just trying to push over and over again, there's like this final boss or like this next really big boss that's just so difficult. I don't know if you've played Terraria or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Games like those where you're just trying to edge out everything you can to be able to beat the boss once, but once you beat it, the loot that you get from it makes you so much stronger, and then from there it's like this exponential, like everything
Yes,
compounds,
yes.
and you can just beat it over and over and over again and just scale super hard. I feel like that's like those players that are kind of around the same rink for a long time and then just go crazy. Like Window Life is the most recent example where but just any of those players that just like everything clicks,
Yeah,
so to speak. I feel like that is a good sort of analogy to think of it.
100%. And you know, sometimes you won't have those moments where everything clicks, right? You might do a really impressive score for where you are currently skill wise, but you know, sometimes things just don't click, and you just have to keep playing until they do, right? And you know, of course, it's never as linear as okay, you do this, this is gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Of course, as I've been saying throughout the whole time, it's different for everyone, you know.
Yes. Well said. Do you have any final bits of wisdom as we wrap up the interview?
No matter what, just enjoy playing the game, right? That's the best thing. You know, if people want advice on how to genuinely improve, they can seek that. Don't, you know, don't be like, oh, back in my day, because I used to do that. You know, I used to say like, oh, you know, top players back in my day wouldn't ask people, but it's like, what you know, what don't you have to gain from asking someone who's better than you about something, right?
Right.
So you know, if people want to ask about how to improve, they can, and let people share their opinion, right? This is we all have fun here. We love the game. Let's enjoy it together.
Very well said. Thanks again, Blue. Do you have any places where people can find you other than your OSU profile?
Yeah. My Twitter at BIOO Son. I couldn't get Blue Son. Somebody took it.
No.
You can find me doing OSU coaching now
Oh
on
yeah.
metify.gg/ at blue. And you can find me on Twitch, .tv/blue sun, BLOOSUN. Yeah, shout out Habib though. Very, very thankful. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your wisdom, and I'm sure I'll see you much, much more in the coming future. But also, it looks like your Twitter handle on your profile is outdated. Uh-oh.
No.
Oh no. Yes. Anyway, thank you again, Blue, for taking the time and everyone for listening. And we will see you all next time.
Bye bye.